The Scars on My Locker, A Reunion of Reckoning, Chapter 1, The Invitation, May 2025. The thick, creamy envelope arrived on a Tuesday, nestled among bills and junk mail. My name, Samantha Harper Askew, was elegantly printed on the front, addressed to my downtown Chicago apartment. My hands, usually steady as I navigate the intricate dance of civil rights law, trembled slightly as I recognized the return address. Springfield High School Alumni Committee, Springfield, Illinois. A cold, familiar dread coiled in my stomach. The 25-year reunion. My heart, usually a robust, unyielding organ, contracted, a painful clench of memory and disgust. Springfield. The name alone could conjure the ghosts of my past, a past I had meticulously buried, brick by painful brick. I was 42 now, a successful civil rights attorney. My work, fighting for the marginalized, the silenced, the wronged, was my life's purpose. It was, in many ways, my quiet defiance against the very forces that had tried to crush me in high school. I had built a new life, a new identity, far from the suffocating confines of that small Midwestern city. My partner, Sarah, a warm and brilliant doctor, had no idea of the full extent of the hell I had endured in those formative years. I never spoke of it. Why reopen old wounds when they seemed to have finally scabbed over? But this invitation, pristine and seemingly innocent, ripped the scabs clean off. High school, a nightmare. From freshman year to graduation, I was the target, the freak, the outcast, and worst of all, the slut. The rumors, vicious and unfounded, spread like wildfire, fueled by the popular crowd, whispered in hallways, scrawled on bathroom stalls. But the most enduring, most humiliating mark was on my locker. Almost daily, the hateful words, whore, easy, slut, scrawled in thick, black marker, sometimes spray paint. For everyone to see. Every morning I would arrive early, clutching my books, stomach churning, praying it wouldn't be there. And every morning, my heart would sink, my cheeks would burn, as I saw the latest iteration of their cruelty. I would frantically scrub it off, my fingers aching, but the words were already etched into my soul. Laughter in the classrooms, snickers in the lunchroom, shoves in the crowded hallways. Isolation. Utter, profound isolation. I walked with my head down, my eyes fixed on the floor, my shoulders hunched, trying to become invisible. I ate lunch alone in the library. I walked home alone, often taking the longest route, just to delay facing my empty house, my silent parents. My younger sister, Jenna, a timid freshman when I was a senior, suffered too, simply by association, enduring whispers and cold shoulders because she was my sister. I could never forgive them for that. I had vowed, then and there, that I would never return. Never. I would never see their faces again. The faces of the bullies, the indifferent bystanders, the popular ones who encouraged the torment, and the cowardly ones who just watched. And now, this invitation, signed by Chloe Delaney. Chloe, the queen bee, the architect of so much of my suffering. She was always the ringleader, the one with the cruelest smile, the loudest laugh, the most venomous whispers, the one who orchestrated the locker defacements. Her name on the invitation, bold and unblinking, was a final, ironic twist of the knife. Why now? Why me? Did they genuinely not remember? Did they think a quarter century would erase the indelible ink of their cruelty from my skin? Did they expect me to return, a success story, eager to share old times and feign camaraderie? The thought was absurd, enraging, disgusting. I crumpled the invitation, a satisfying crunch of paper, and tossed it into the recycling bin. Forget it. It was garbage. Just like their memories of me. just like their empty apologies, just like their twisted sense of nostalgia. I had moved on. I was stronger. I was a fighter. And I would not give them the satisfaction of my presence. I would not relive that agony, not for anything. The past was past, or so I desperately tried to convince myself. But even as the invitation disappeared into the bin, its ghost remained, a cold, persistent whisper, stirring the dormant rage and pain within me. Chapter 2: The Ghost of Memory. The crumpled invitation lay in the recycling bin for 2 days. 2 days of restless nights, of phantom smells of cheap cleaning solution and marker fumes, of whispered words echoing in the empty rooms of my mind. 2 days of the cold knot in my stomach tightening, refusing to release its grip. Sarah, my partner, noticed. She always does. "You're distant," she said one evening, gently touching my arm as I stared, unseeing, at the city lights outside our window. "Something's bothering you, more than usual." I hesitated, then sighed, retrieving the crumpled paper from the bin. "My 25-year high school reunion," I mumbled, smoothing it out. "It's in Springfield." Her brow furrowed. She knew vaguely of my difficult past, the bullying I'd mentioned, the reason I rarely spoke of my childhood home. But I had always downplayed it, never truly revealed the depth of the torment. "You're going?" she asked, her voice soft, tentative. "No," I snapped, the word sharper than I intended. "Of course not. Why would I? To go back to the place where I was treated like dirt, where they wrote whore on my locker every single day." The words tumbled out, raw and painful, words I had never before spoken aloud to anyone. Sarah listened, her expression unwavering, full of compassion. When I finished, the silence in the apartment was thick with my unspoken pain. "Sam," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I know how much that must have hurt, how much it still hurts. But what if you went? Not for them, for you." I scoffed. "For me? To prove what? That I survived? They don't care." "No," she insisted, taking my hand. "Not to prove anything to them. To prove something to yourself. To face it. To walk back into that lion's den, not as the terrified girl they remembered, but as the powerful, successful woman you are today. To look them in the eye. To see if they've changed. To see if you can finally find a way to let go of the anger." Her words resonated, a profound, unsettling truth. The anger. It had festered for decades, a poisonous well within me. It had fueled my ambition, yes, driven my fight for justice, but it had also kept me chained to the past, a silent, invisible burden. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to go, not for reconciliation, not for apologies, but for confrontation, for closure, to finally excise the poison. The decision gnawed at me for days. The thought of seeing Chloe, of seeing all of them, made my stomach clench. But the thought of not going, of allowing the past to continue to hold me captive, felt even worse. "Okay," I said to Sarah one evening, the word a reluctant whisper. "I'll go, but don't expect fireworks or forgiveness." The drive to Springfield was a strange journey through time. The familiar landmarks, the flat Illinois landscape, the endless cornfields, they all triggered a complex tapestry of emotions. Nostalgia for a childhood innocence that was stolen too soon, bitterness for the years of torment, and a cold, determined anticipation of confronting the ghosts of my past. The town itself hadn't changed much. The same quaint downtown square, the same quiet residential streets. It felt small, suffocating. But I wasn't the scared, small girl anymore. I was Sam Harper, Esquire, and I was here. My first meeting was with Matt Davis. Matt, my only true friend in high school, the quiet, kind boy who would sometimes sit with me in the library, who would try to deflect the bully's taunts, who would offer a silent, knowing glance when no one else would. He was a veterinarian now, still gentle, still kind. We met at a small coffee shop, far from the reunion venue. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine warmth. "Sam," he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "I can't believe you came. I'm so glad to see you." His sincerity was a balm to my guarded heart. We talked for hours, catching up on our lives. Then, hesitantly, I broached the topic of high school. Matt's expression darkened. "Sam, I'm so sorry for everything. I hated what they did to you. I hated myself for not doing more. We were kids, but that's no excuse. It was cruel, and you didn't deserve any of it." His apology, raw and heartfelt, brought an unexpected lump to my throat. "Most of us," he continued, "we knew it was wrong, but we were afraid. Afraid of being targeted ourselves. Afraid of challenging Chloe and her crowd. It was easier to look away. And later, many of us felt ashamed. Ashamed of our silence. Ashamed of what they did to you. But we never knew how to say it, how to apologize." His words confirmed my suspicions. I had been a cautionary tale, a subject of collective shame and unspoken guilt. But there was also a glimmer of something else. Regret. Real, palpable regret. It wasn't just pity, it was also remorse. And as the evening of the reunion loomed, I felt a strange mix of dread and a newfound, unsettling sense of anticipation. What would happen when all these unspoken regrets and buried shames finally converged in one room? I was about to find out. Chapter 3: The Ballroom of Ghosts. The grand ballroom, same as any other reunion, buzzed with the usual blend of forced laughter and nostalgic chatter. But for me, it was a ghost-filled chamber. Every face, every familiar voice, triggered a ripple of memory. The blonde hair of a girl who'd tripped me in the hallway. The sneering smile of a boy who'd mocked my clothes. The indifferent gaze of a teacher who'd simply looked away. I walked in with Sarah by my side, her presence a quiet anchor in the churning sea of my emotions. I kept my head high, my posture straight. No hunched shoulders, no downcast eyes. I was here. I was here on my terms. Some former classmates caught my eye, then quickly averted their gaze, their faces coloring. Others, the more audacious ones, approached with an almost aggressive friendliness. "Sam, wow, you look amazing. So good to see you." Their smiles were too wide, their compliments too effusive. They tried to erase 25 years of cruelty with a single, superficial interaction. It was transparent and infuriating. Then I saw her, Chloe Delaney. She was older, of course. Lines etched around her eyes, a weariness in her posture that belied the glamorous dress she wore. The queen bee had lost some of her sting. She was standing by the stage, organizing. She looked up, our eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of something raw in her gaze, recognition, and, perhaps, something akin to fear. She walked towards me, her steps hesitant. "Sam?" she began, her voice softer than I remembered. "Samantha Harper. I wasn't sure if you'd come, but I'm so glad you did." Her smile was strained, almost pleading. "You signed the invitation, Chloe," I stated, my voice cool, devoid of warmth. "Why invite me? For old time's sake?" She flinched. "No, not for that. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to apologize. Properly. I know what we did. It was awful. I've regretted it for years. I was planning to make a public apology tonight, at the dinner, on behalf of all of us. A public apology. A grand gesture. A performance." My lips curled into a mirthless smile. "A public apology?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "How convenient. So you can cleanse your conscience in front of everyone?" "No, thank you, Chloe. Your apologies, public or private, won't erase the words from my locker or the years of hell you put me through." I turned, dismissing her, and walked away, pulling Sarah with me. The anger, sharp and cold, flared. It felt good. It felt protective. I scanned the room, my eyes settling on another familiar face. Derek O'Neill, the boy who was supposed to be different. Kind, intelligent, popular, a quiet strength. The one I had secretly harbored a crush on, foolishly believing he would see beyond the labels. The one who had witnessed it all and done nothing. He was still handsome, still surrounded by a deferential crowd. A successful businessman, I'd heard. He saw me, our eyes locking across the crowded room. He excused himself from his admirers and walked over, his stride confident. "Sam," he said, his smile charming, but his eyes held a strange flicker, a mixture of recognition and unease. "Wow, you look incredible. It's been too long." "It has," I replied, my voice as flat as the Illinois plains. 25 years, plenty of time to build a life, or to forget a past. He seemed to miss the barb. "Yeah, definitely. So what have you been up to? I heard you're a big-shot lawyer in Chicago." "That's amazing." He tried to sound genuinely interested, but his words felt hollow, a forced cordiality. "I fight for people who've been wronged, Derek," I said, my gaze unwavering. "People who've been silenced and humiliated. People who've been called names and treated like dirt." I let the words hang in the air, a silent accusation. His charming smile faltered. He cleared his throat, his eyes darting away. "Right. Well, that's admirable. Listen, I should probably go grab a drink." He retreated, quickly dissolving back into the crowd of his sycophants. Coward. Always a coward. I felt a surge of bitter satisfaction. At least I hadn't let him off the hook. Later, I excused myself to the ladies' room. As I pushed open the door, I heard voices from inside. 2 familiar, shrill voices. Beth and Cindy, Chloe's most loyal lieutenants, the ones who had laughed the loudest. "Can you believe Sam Harper actually showed up?" Beth whispered, a note of disbelief in her voice. "I mean, after, remember how she was back then? God, that was wild." Cindy giggled, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Yeah, she was such a piece of work, always so quiet. But you had to wonder, right? I mean, where there's smoke." My blood ran cold. The words, the same old insidious insinuations. My anger, simmering beneath the surface all night, finally boiled over. I stepped fully into the room, letting the door swing shut with a soft thud behind me. Beth and Cindy froze. Their eyes, wide with shock, met mine in the reflection of the large mirror. Their faces, once filled with cruel amusement, drained of color. Their smiles vanished, replaced by open-mouthed horror. The past, they realized, was not forgotten, and the victim they had tormented had returned, not as a broken girl, but as a formidable woman. For a long, silent moment, we simply stared at each other in the mirror, the weight of their past cruelty and my present fury hanging heavy in the air. The reunion, I knew, was about to take a very different turn. Chapter 4. The Unmasking. The silence in the ladies' room was deafening. Beth and Cindy, caught in their venomous whispers, stood frozen, their faces pale reflections of their past cruelty. Their eyes, wide with sudden terror, darted from my reflection to my actual presence. As if trying to reconcile the successful lawyer standing before them with the terrified girl they had tormented, I didn't speak. I simply stood there, my gaze unwavering, my posture erect. I let them squirm. I let the shame wash over them. The tables, after 25 years, had finally turned. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds, Beth stammered, "Oh, Sam, hi. We were just..." Her voice trailed off, unable to form a coherent lie. Cindy, her usual giggling self, was utterly silent, her mouth agape. I finally spoke, my voice low, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. "You were just remembering, weren't you? Remembering how easy it was to spread lies, to write names on a locker, to laugh at someone's pain." My eyes bored into theirs. "Don't worry, I remember too." I turned, walked past them, and exited the bathroom, leaving them stunned and humiliated. A small, almost imperceptible surge of satisfaction went through me. Not vengeance, not truly, but a reclaiming of power. I returned to the ballroom, where the dinner portion of the evening was about to begin. I found Sarah and Matt, and we took our seats at a table near the back. My heart was still pounding, but the anger had coalesced into a steely resolve. I would not let them win. I would not leave. Mr. Harper, my beloved former English teacher, took the stage. He was older, his hair thinner, but his eyes still held that profound wisdom I remembered. He cleared his throat, and the chatter in the room slowly died down. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice calm, resonant. "It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces here tonight. Celebrating 25 years since we walked these halls together." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, lingering for a moment on me. "Tonight, as we look back, it's a time for fond memories, for laughter, for reconnecting. But it's also a time for reflection, for understanding that the people we were then shaped the people we are now." His voice grew more serious. "High school, for many, is a time of incredible growth, but for some, it can be a time of immense pain, a time when unkindness, even cruelty, can leave lasting scars. As a teacher, I often saw the best in you, but sometimes I also saw actions that were less than kind, actions that had profound, sometimes devastating consequences for others." He didn't name names, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Many heads bowed. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. 25 years gives us perspective," Mr. Harper continued, his voice unwavering. "It gives us the chance to acknowledge mistakes, to understand the weight of our words and actions, to offer genuine regret, and perhaps, if we are brave enough, to seek forgiveness. True forgiveness, I believe, begins with genuine remorse. It's not about forgetting the past, but about acknowledging it, learning from it, and striving to be better, for ourselves and for those we may have wronged." His words were a quiet, powerful indictment, a call to conscience. I looked up. Meeting his gaze, he offered me a small, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement that he saw me, that he understood. As Mr. Harper stepped away from the microphone, a profound silence descended upon the ballroom. Then, unexpectedly, a figure rose from a table near the front. Chloe Delaney. She walked slowly, deliberately, towards the microphone, her face pale, her hands trembling. My heart quickened. What was she doing? Another insincere apology? Chloe took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room, then settling on me. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper, yet it carried across the hushed room, raw with emotion. "Mr. Harper is right," she began, her voice cracking. 25 years, it gives you perspective, and it gives you shame, profound shame. She paused, taking another shaky breath. My name is Chloe Delaney, and 25 years ago, I was a bully. I was cruel. I was responsible for a lot of the pain that was inflicted on Samantha Harper during our years here. Her voice strengthened, though still laced with a deep tremor. I led the charge. I spread the rumors. I wrote the words on her locker. I made her life a living hell, and I know there are others in this room who participated, or who stood by and watched. She looked directly at Beth and Cindy, who were now slumped in their seats, their faces a ghastly white. Samantha. Chloe continued, her voice thick with tears. I know words can't erase what I did. They can't unwrite the pain. But I am so sorry, truly. I have lived with the guilt of it for years. I have tried to make amends in my own life, to be a better person. But I can never undo the harm I caused you. I ask for your forgiveness, not because I deserve it, but because I need you to know how deeply I regret it, how truly ashamed I am. The entire ballroom was utterly silent. No one moved, no one spoke. It was a moment of stunning, brutal honesty. Then another figure rose, Derek O'Neill, the former Golden Boy. He walked towards the microphone, his usual confident stride replaced by a heavy, almost stumbling gait. He looked directly at me. His eyes filled with a raw, undeniable torment. "Chloe is right," he said, his voice husky, laced with emotion. "We were cowards. I was a coward. I saw what was happening to you, Sam. I saw the words, I heard the whispers, and I did nothing. I stood by. I chose popularity over decency. I chose silence over courage." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "I was too afraid to stand up. And for that, Sam, I am profoundly sorry, truly sorry. I regret my inaction more than anything. I hope one day you can forgive me." The dam broke, spontaneously, tentatively at first. Then, with growing confidence, other classmates began to rise. Some came to the microphone, their voices choked with tears and regret. Others walked directly towards me, their faces contorted with remorse, offering whispered apologies, extending trembling hands. They confessed their complicity, their silence, their shame. Each confession, each apology chipped away at the hardened shell around my heart. The anger, the bitter resentment began to soften, replaced by a profound, overwhelming sense of something. Not forgiveness yet, but a recognition, a powerful, undeniable acknowledgement of the truth. The ghosts in the ballroom were finally speaking, and they were begging for absolution. Chapter 5. The Slow Thaw. The ballroom, once a suffocating chamber of pity, transformed into a space of raw, uncomfortable, yet ultimately cathartic truth. The confessions continued, a ripple effect spreading through the room. People I barely remembered, or those who had been mere bystanders, approached me, their faces etched with genuine regret. They spoke of the shame they had carried, the quiet guilt that had festered over the years. They admitted to turning a blind eye, to participating in the whispered judgments, to being too afraid to stand up. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer immediate forgiveness. My eyes, once narrowed with suspicion, now simply observed, taking in the sincerity of their contrition. Some apologies felt deeper, more genuine than others, but the collective weight of their remorse was undeniable. It was a flood of acknowledgement, a torrent of validation that washed over me, slowly, gradually eroding the hard, protective shell I had built around my heart. When the spontaneous apologies finally tapered off, a profound silence settled over the room once more. It was a different kind of silence this time, not the oppressive silence of indifference, but the heavy quiet of shared truth, of collective reckoning. I stood up. Sarah, my anchor, placed a reassuring hand on my back. I walked towards the microphone, the very one Chloe and Derek had used. My legs felt steady. My voice, when I spoke, was clear, calm, and strong. "Thank you," I said, my gaze sweeping across the room, meeting the eyes of those who had spoken and those who had listened. "Thank you, Mr. Harper, for your words, and Chloe and Derek, and all of you who spoke tonight. What you did to me in high school, it shaped me. It left scars." I paused, letting the truth hang in the air. Scars that I carry to this day. My voice softened, but remained firm. "I won't pretend that your apologies erase those scars. They don't. And I won't pretend that it's easy for me to just forgive and forget. It's not." I looked directly at Chloe, then at Derek. "But your words, your courage tonight, they mean something. They mean a lot. They are a start." I felt a profound shift within me. The anger, which had been a consuming fire for so long, had finally found its release. It didn't mean the pain was gone, but it meant the bitter, corrosive resentment that had festered for decades was finally dissipating. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a switch I could simply flip. It was a long, complex journey, but this was the first critical step on that path. I found Matt, my true friend, later that night. He had watched the entire scene unfold with tears in his eyes, a silent, proud smile on his face. "You were incredible, Sam," he whispered, pulling me into a fierce hug. "You truly were." I met Mr. Harper's gaze across the room. He gave me another nod, a gentle smile. His eyes conveyed a deep sense of satisfaction, a quiet pride. He had planted the seed of truth, and it had blossomed into an unexpected moment of reckoning. As the night drew to a close, and people began to trickle out, there was a different atmosphere, a quiet solemnity, an undeniable sense of catharsis. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel completely healed, but I felt lighter, as if a crushing weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The shackles of anger, of shame, of bitter resentment had finally loosened. The drive back to Chicago with Sarah was filled with a different kind of silence. Not the heavy, burdened silence of the journey to Springfield, but a quiet, reflective one. I told Sarah everything, every detail of the bullying, every word Chloe had scrawled, every moment of my isolation. And she listened, her hand resting gently on my knee, her presence a comforting warmth. For the first time, I felt truly seen, truly heard, not with pity, but with profound understanding and love. Back in Chicago, the healing continued. It wasn't immediate or easy. I still had moments when the old pain flared, when the phantom words on the locker seemed to reappear. But now, I had a new framework for understanding. I had received the acknowledgement I had unconsciously craved for decades. I wrote a long letter to Mr. Harper, thanking him for his unwavering decency, for seeing me when no one else did, and for his powerful words at the reunion. He wrote back, his letter filled with continued wisdom and pride. I started talking to Matt regularly. Our friendship, once a lifeline in the darkness, was now a source of mutual support and shared understanding. We reminisced about Jenna, sharing stories and laughter, finally honoring her memory without the shadow of my guilt. And Chloe. After a few weeks, I received an email from her, a short, hesitant message simply asking if I would be open to a cup of coffee if she was ever in Chicago. I hesitated, then replied, "Perhaps, one day when the time is right." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an open door, a tentative step towards acknowledging that even the perpetrators of pain can change, can seek redemption. I understood now that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it. The scars on my locker, the words they had scrawled, would always be a part of my story. But they no longer defined me. I was not a victim. I was a survivor. A woman who had faced her demons, and in doing so, had found a profound, unexpected path to liberation. My purpose, fighting for civil rights, gained new depth, new meaning. I could now speak to the pain of others with an even greater sense of empathy, knowing that even the deepest wounds could, eventually, begin to heal. The echoes of my past, once a haunting chorus of shame, were now fading, replaced by the quiet, hopeful anthem of hard-won peace.